The microphone crackled. 200 people went quiet. My mother, Sandra Reeves, was standing in the middle of my graduation reception, champagne flute in hand, wearing the yellow dress she'd bought specifically for this evening, and she was looking directly at my brother Tyler. Not at me, at Tyler. "I want to say," she began, in the particular voice she used when she had rehearsed something, "that while I am proud of everyone who graduated today, my real pride belongs to my son Tyler. He stayed close to home. He never forgot where he came from. Some children leave." She paused. "Some children stay. I know which one I am more grateful for." Someone in the back row coughed. My thesis advisor, Professor Hartley, who was standing 3 feet to my left, went completely still. My colleague Marcus closed his eyes briefly, the way you close your eyes when something happens in public that cannot be taken back. I had just spent 5 years earning a civil engineering degree. I had done it on scholarships and part-time jobs and 4-hour sleep cycles, and one particularly brutal winter where I ate rice and canned tomatoes for 6 weeks because tuition was due and the heating bill was due, and I was not going to ask my mother for money, because my mother had made it quietly clear, over 5 years of phone calls and holiday visits, that my education was something I was doing to her rather than for myself. I set down my graduation program. I looked at Sandra Reeves. I smiled. "Thanks for coming, Mom," I said. Then I turned back to Professor Hartley and continued our conversation about the structural assessment report I had just submitted, as if the ground had not shifted, as if 200 people had not just heard my mother use my graduation to deliver a tribute to my 27-year-old brother for the act of living 10 minutes away. I was calm. I had learned to be calm. What Sandra did not know, what almost nobody in that room knew except Professor Hartley and a community center director named Donna Harper, was that I had spent the previous 4 weekends quietly saving a building. And in 6 weeks, at the annual Bridgewater Community Development Awards, 200 people were going to find out about it. Not because I planned it that way, because the truth, if you give it enough time and enough space, has a way of showing up exactly when it needs to. If you have ever sat through your own celebration while someone used it to honor somebody else, stay right where you are. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, because this one is going to feel familiar. My name is Zoe Reeves. I am 32 years old, and I am a civil engineer, which means I spend my working life looking at structures that other people walk past without noticing, and figuring out what is holding them up and what might eventually bring them down. I have always been good at that kind of seeing. I developed it early, growing up in a house where a great deal depended on noticing things nobody else was saying. My mother Sandra is 58. She is warm, church-going, well-liked in the neighborhood, the kind of woman who brings food to funerals and remembers everybody's children's names. She is also the kind of woman who dropped out of engineering school at 19, married my father at 21, had me at 23, had my brother Tyler at 28, and spent the next 3 decades building her entire emotional world around the child who asked the least of her. That child was Tyler. Tyler is not a bad person. I want to be clear about that, because this story is not about Tyler. Not really. Tyler works at a garage on Route 7, calls our mother every morning, brings her groceries on Sundays, and has never in his life been required to sit with discomfort long enough to figure out who he actually is, because Sandra arrived before the discomfort could land. He is 27 years old and genuinely kind and completely unaware that his mother's devotion to him is constructed partly from the ruins of whatever she might have felt for me, if feeling it had not cost her something she was not prepared to pay. Sandra dropped out of engineering school after failing her second year. She has never said this directly to me. I know it the way I know most things about my mother, sideways, through other people, accumulated over years of small conversations that were about something else on the surface. Mrs. Pauline Grant, our neighbor of 20 years, let it slip once over tea when I was 25, almost by accident, the way people let things slip when they have been holding them for a long time and forget, briefly, that they were supposed to keep holding. "Your mother was going to build bridges," Mrs. Grant said, stirring her tea. "She used to say that. I am going to build bridges, Pauline. She had those big textbooks, the engineering ones. Then she met your father, and I suppose life went a different direction. I sat with that information for a long time. I filed it carefully, the way I file structural anomalies in assessment reports, not as a weapon, but as a fact, that explained the load-bearing problem I had been trying to diagnose for years. My mother could not look at my success without seeing her own failure. Every exam I passed, every scholarship I received, every semester I completed was a mirror she had not asked to look into. And rather than look away from the mirror, she had spent years trying to convince herself and everyone around her that what I was doing did not count as much as what Tyler was doing, which was staying close, being present, being the child she could love without complication. I understood it. Understanding it did not make it hurt less, but it gave me something to do with the hurt that was more useful than anger, which was building things. Quietly, consistently, without asking anyone to watch. 3 months before graduation, the community center on Bridgewater Avenue nearly got condemned. Donna Harper, the director, called me on a Tuesday evening in a state that was trying hard not to panic. Someone had flagged the building for a routine structural inspection. The inspector had noted several areas of concern. The city had given Donna 60 days to provide a professional assessment or face closure proceedings. Donna did not have the budget for a professional assessment. The community center ran on grants and bake sales, and the particular determination of a woman who had been keeping that building open through 3 recessions and 1 pandemic. She called me because Marcus, my colleague, had mentioned my name. I drove out on a Saturday morning with my inspection kit and spent 6 hours inside that building. What I found was not good. The load-bearing walls on the east side had a stress fracture pattern that the original construction had masked with cosmetic plastering. Left unaddressed for another 18 months, the building would have required major structural intervention or demolition. I filed the emergency assessment report. I sourced 3 contractors. I attended every planning meeting. I supervised the remediation work across 4 consecutive weekends while simultaneously finishing my thesis. I did not charge Donna anything because the community center ran a free after-school program for 60 kids on Bridgewater Avenue, and I was not going to put a bill on that. I did not tell my mother. There was no conversation in which it would have fit, no opening in our phone calls where I could have said, by the way, I have been quietly saving a building on the weekends while you tell Mrs. Grant that I never call. I just did the work, filed the reports, and went back to my apartment and studied for my finals. Donna knew, Professor Hartley knew, Marcus knew because he had referred me. Nobody else knew, not yet. If you have ever done something that mattered, quietly, while someone told the neighborhood you could not be bothered to show up, comment the word invisible below. Because what happened next took months to build and about 4 minutes to land. After the graduation, Sandra did what Sandra does when she has done something she knows was wrong but cannot bring herself to examine. She kept going. She told Mrs. Grant that I had barely acknowledged her at the reception. She told the women's group at Grace Baptist that Tyler was the one who truly understood family values. She told our Aunt Patricia, who lives in Birmingham and calls twice a year, that I had become very grand since the degree and was too busy for the people who raised her. None of this reached me directly. It reached me the way most things reached me, through the careful, apologetic delivery of people who liked me and were troubled by what they were hearing. Mrs. Grant called me on a Wednesday evening. "Zoe," she said, "I want you to know that I do not believe what your mother has been saying. I have known you since you were 7 years old, and I have never once seen you be grand." What has she been saying, Mrs. Grant? A pause. The kind of pause that precedes something uncomfortable being said is kind. She told the women's group that you did not come to Tyler's birthday last month because you felt the party was beneath you. I closed my eyes. Tyler's birthday was the Saturday I had been at the community center supervising the final stage of the wall remediation. I had sent Tyler a gift card and a voice note because I could not leave mid-supervision. Sandra knew this because I had texted her that morning to explain. She had taken my absence and rewritten it. Not with cruelty exactly, but with the practiced ease of someone who had been telling a particular story about a particular daughter for so long that the story had become more real to her than the facts underneath it. I thanked Mrs. Grant. I sat at my kitchen table for a while. Then I called Donna to check on the community center's post-remediation inspection, which had been scheduled for the following week. "Passed with flying colors," Donna said. "The inspector said whoever did the assessment caught something that would have been catastrophic." "Zoe, I cannot tell you what this building means to this neighborhood." "I know," I said. "I am glad it is standing." "Marcus has been talking to the awards committee," Donna said. The Bridgewater Community Development Awards. They want to create a new category this year, structural impact, for the assessment work. Donna, I said. Before you say no, she said, just know that the community center hosts the awards night, and the women's group from Grace Baptist comes every year. Sandra will be invited by Mrs. Grant, the same as always. I was quiet for a moment. I am not doing it for that reason, I said. I know you are not, Donna said. That is exactly why you should let us do it. If you have ever watched someone rewrite your absence without mentioning the building you were saving while you were gone, comment the word witness below. Because 6 weeks later, the witnesses assembled. The annual Bridgewater Community Development Awards were held on a Friday evening in November, inside the community center on Bridgewater Avenue, whose east wall was now structurally sound for the next 40 years. 200 chairs, round tables with white cloths, a podium at the front with the Bridgewater Community Foundation banner behind it. The kind of event that the neighborhood genuinely turned out for, because Donna ran it well, and the food was good, and people liked having one night a year where the community looked at itself and said, "This is what we built." Sandra came because Mrs. Grant invited her. Mrs. Grant told her only that someone from the neighborhood was being recognized and that Sandra should come and bring Tyler. Sandra told 3 people in the parking lot, including Reverend Cole from Grace Baptist, that she was there because Tyler was being honored. I know this because Reverend Cole told Marcus, who told me, 40 minutes before the ceremony began. I was in the back room with Donna when Marcus found me. "Your mother is in the front row," he said. "She thinks this is for Tyler." "I know," I said. "Are you okay?" I thought about that question. Am I okay? I was 32 years old. I had saved a building, finished a degree, funded my own education, covered Tyler's community college application fees 2 years ago without telling anyone, and listened to my mother tell the neighborhood I was too grand to show up. "I am fine," I said. "Let's go." Donna opened the awards with remarks about the community center's history, 22 years of after-school programs, neighborhood meetings, health screenings, grief support groups, and the particular kind of work that holds a neighborhood together from the inside. She talked about the renovation that had saved the building the previous spring. She talked about a structural assessment that had caught a critical failure point that would have condemned the building within 18 months. I was sitting 3 tables back. I could see my mother clearly. Sandra was leaning over to Tyler, saying something. Tyler was nodding and looking at the stage. He had no idea. That was the thing about Tyler. He genuinely had no idea. Donna said, "The inaugural Structural Impact Award goes to the engineer who volunteered her time, her expertise, and 4 consecutive weekends to ensure that this building is still standing. Who sourced contractors, negotiated repair costs, supervised remediation work, and filed every report without charging this community a single dollar." She paused. Zoe Reeves. The room rose. Not all at once, but in a wave, the way a room rises when it recognizes something real. Professor Hartley was on his feet first, then Marcus, then the table nearest the door, then the middle of the room, then the front row, except for 2 people. Sandra Reeves did not stand. She sat with both hands in her lap and looked at the podium as if it had said something in a language she did not recognize. Tyler stood up. He started clapping before most of the room did, which told me everything I needed to know about my brother, which was that whatever our mother had built around him, he was still, underneath it, someone who could recognize a real thing when he saw one. I walked to the podium. I thanked Donna. I thanked the contractors. I thanked Professor Hartley for teaching me how to read a stress fracture. I did not look at my mother while I was speaking. Not because I was avoiding her, but because those 200 people deserved to be looked at directly, and I was going to give them that. When I stepped back from the podium, Donna opened the floor. What happened next was not planned. I did not arrange it. I did not ask anyone to speak. It happened the way things happen when the truth has been buried long enough that people have been quietly waiting for somewhere to put it. Mrs. Grant stood up first. She was 71 years old and had known my family since before I was born, and she stood up in the middle of the Bridgewater Community Development Awards and said, "I want to say something about this young woman. I have watched Zoe Reeves since she was 7 years old. I have watched her put herself through school and send money home and never once ask for recognition. And I have also watched the neighborhood be told a story about her that is not true. This is the true story. She saved the building we are sitting in. She did it for free. And she did it the same weekend her mother told the church group she could not be bothered to show up for her brother's birthday. The room was completely still. Reverend Cole said, from his table near the window, "I have to say, I received a very different account of that young woman's character at the Grace Baptist Women's Group." Donna said quietly, "We all did." Sandra's jaw moved. Nothing came out. Then Doug Clearwater, who ran the pharmacy on Route 9 and had set up a free medication information table at the awards night, raised his hand. "Zoe picks up her mother's prescriptions every month, has been doing it for 2 years. I see her every month, regular as a clock, sometimes straight off a job site, still in her work clothes." I had not told anyone that. I had not told anyone any of it. But Doug knew, because he was the pharmacist. Marcus knew, because I had mentioned the prescriptions once in passing. And Donna knew, because I had told her when she asked how I knew the neighborhood. I had learned it while walking to the pharmacy for my mother. One by one, not planned, not coordinated. Each person holds one fragment of the same buried truth. Sandra sat in the front row and watched the neighborhood she had been telling stories to for months assemble those fragments into a picture she could not argue with. Because the people holding the pieces were not Zoe Reeves. They were the pharmacist, the neighbor, the reverend, the professor, people with no reason to coordinate and every reason to be believed. Tyler leaned over to his mother. I could not hear what he said, but I saw Sandra's face when he said it, and what I saw was not anger. It was the expression of someone who has been telling a story for so long they forgot it was a story, and has just been reminded, publicly and irrevocably, that the person in the story was real. If you have ever watched a room full of witnesses quietly dismantle a lie that was told about you without you asking them to, comment the word "speechless" below, because we are almost at the end. The parking lot afterward was cold and clear, the kind of November night that makes everything feel more honest than it did inside. I was loading Donna's equipment into her car when I heard footsteps. Sandra, yellow dress, good coat, the same heels she had worn to the graduation. She looked smaller outside than she had inside. Not diminished exactly, but human in a way the front row of a ceremony had not allowed her to be. "Zoe," she said. "Mom." She opened her mouth and closed it twice. I had never, in 32 years, seen Sandra Reeves struggle to find words. She had always had words, the precise ones, the ones that reframed and redirected and gently buried whatever she did not want to look at directly. "I didn't know about the building," she said finally. "I know," I said. "You didn't ask." She absorbed that. "I have been saying things about you to people. I know that too. I didn't think." She stopped, started again. "I didn't think anyone was going to say all of that tonight." "Neither did I said honestly. A long pause. The parking lot was emptying around us, people drifting to their cars in the cold. "Mrs. Grant told me," Sandra said quietly, "that I used to say I was going to build bridges." "She told me that too," I said. 2 years ago." Sandra looked at me. "You've known for 2 years." "Yes. And you never said anything." "No," I said, "because I wasn't going to use it against you. It wasn't mine to use." She stood there in the parking lot, my mother, 58 years old, and I watched something move through her face that I did not have a name for, but recognized as the expression of someone who has been carrying something for a very long time and has just understood that they have been carrying it in the wrong direction. "I looked at you," she said, "and I saw everything I didn't finish." "I know, Mom. That wasn't fair to you." "No," I said, "it wasn't." She did not cry. Sandra Reeves does not cry in parking lots, but she reached out and took my hand, briefly, the way you hold on to something when you are steadying yourself, and then she let go. Tyler appeared from the direction of the entrance, car keys in hand, and looked between us with the careful expression of someone who has just spent an evening recalibrating everything he thought he understood about his family. "You saved the building," he said to me, not a question, just confirming something that had just become real to him. "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly. "I didn't know you did stuff like that." "I know," I said. "I do a lot of things nobody knows about." He looked at his mother, then back at me, and then he did something that surprised me more than anything else that had happened that evening. He hugged me. Not a polite hug, not a performative one, but the hug of someone who has just realized they missed years of knowing a person and is trying to close some of that distance in one gesture. I let him. It has been 4 months since the awards night. Sandra and I speak on the phone twice a week now, which is twice as much as we spoke before. The conversations are not perfect. Old patterns surface and then correct themselves, like a structure settling after repair. She asks about my work now. Real questions, the kind that require real answers. Last week, she asked me to explain what a load-bearing wall actually was, and I spent 20 minutes describing it while she listened. And at the end, she said, "So you can always tell where the weight is really falling?" "That is exactly right," I said. "You always could," she said quietly. "I just didn't want to look at what you were holding up." I thought about that for a long time after the call, about what it means to carry weight in a family, silently, structurally, the way a wall carries weight without anyone noticing unless it fails. About the 5 years of scholarships, the 4 weekends at the community center, the prescriptions from Doug's pharmacy, and the application fees I paid for Tyler without telling anyone. About 200 people were standing in a room while my mother sat still. About a parking lot in November, and a hand was held briefly and then released. About the difference between a structure that has been patched and one that has been genuinely repaired. We are not repaired, not yet. But we are no longer pretending the cracks are not there, which is, in my professional experience, always where the real work begins. My mother dropped out of engineering school at 19 and spent 30 years making sure I knew my success was something to be ashamed of. I graduated, saved a building, and said nothing. Sometimes the quietest thing you can do is simply let the truth show up on its own schedule. If this story stayed with you, if you have ever been the invisible one who held everything up while someone else got the credit, do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to Quiet Justice Revenge Stories for new stories every single week, and tell me in the comments, have you ever done something real and quiet for your family while they told the neighborhood a different story about you? I will read every comment. I want to hear yours. If you are new here, this is exactly what we do on this channel every week. Quiet people, real work. The truth shows up on its own schedule. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next one.